this is the inspirational lecture. And today we have John Springer back to do this talk. John is a facilitator and a co-creator of the Enchanted Walkabouts. Does them all over the state. And I've known John for 20, 25 years or more. He used to host a metaphysical circle many years ago. I think it was in Winter Park, was it?
Yeah.
And
it was called the OMS Group, Orlando Metaphysical Society.
So John's been involved in a lot of different efforts over the years, always bringing light and hope. He has an elf school, which is Enchanted Living Forest, that stands for the Fairy Realm Play Shops, which conducts programs and walks through out in southeastern Florida. And he has worked with a lot of youth groups, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts. And John's very connected to nature as well as the spiritual part of nature, not just the physical, biological part of nature, but the spiritual organization of nature, which is a nice combination. So please welcome John Springer.
Yeah, all right, that's better. Yeah. Welcome. I'm John Springer, and this is my moniker of having the top hat. For all my programs and walkabouts that I do, I always wear the top hat. And usually I keep a rabbit in, but when it's this warm and all this, and many have seen the rabbit is not welcome at all. It just cooks my head too much. I wanted to share something really quick with you, and this I bring this a lot. And this is the ballerina tree. Now this is an actual tree. This is not Photoshop. This actually existed at one time. It was in Vernon, British Columbia. And the lady that took the photo did not know she was taking the photo of this tree. She was actually taking photos of orbs at her friend's house in British Columbia. And she lives in Alberta. Until she started looking at her photos and then saw this tree. Well, unfortunately, this tree has since been destroyed by floods. And interesting enough, there's a tree that's growing on the same property that's taking on the same characteristics as the ballerina tree. So it's young, but it's coming up and it has very similar. So apparently the energy of the dancer is still there. So we use this symbol as the joy of nature. And it was our symbol for our Fairy and Earth Festival, which I co-created in St. Petersburg in November. And so it was indeed the joy of nature. Now, there was an interesting song that you selected last, because years ago my friend Dove from Hamilton, Alabama, called me, and she said, "My sons are getting away from God. How do I get them to find God?" I said, "I have to go out and hug a tree for 20 minutes. They said, what do you mean you hug a tree for 20 minutes? I said, by hugging a tree, you're hugging God. And make sure there's no ants and anything else, and make sure they stay hugged for at least 20 minutes. Well, she said it really made a difference. They realized that God was in everything. Everything. And sometimes we sort of take the earth for granted when we don't honor and bless the land around us and the food we eat. Let me ask you another question. Have you ever been into a restaurant and everything was, everybody was angry? The waitresses were angry, the waiter was angry, the patrons were angry, there was disruptive energy in the restaurant. Have you ever had that happen? Chances are the cook was angry. And that anger from the cook went into the food, and everyone that touched or served that food was affected by that anger. I remember one night, my wife was very upset and angry. Something was going on. Her mom, who's 93, leans over to me and says, "We better bless this food. We better pray over this food because Patricia's just fuming. We need to bless this food." And I thought it was pretty interesting of her to acknowledge that, to do the blessings of the food. And sometimes we forget that the food that comes to us comes through the hands of many. From the pickers, to the packers, to the shippers, to the distributors, to the sellers, to the preparers, to us. That's a lot of people that handle our food before we get it. That's why it's so very important to honor and bless the food before you eat it. Doing prayers over it. A lot of you put your hands over it and sort of include your energy, and that's important as well, to involve yourself into it. Because you just have to, I mean, when I go to any restaurant now, I bless the water, the food, the salad, everything. And, you know, interesting enough, things taste better. And just another example, I found out when we pick fruit, we always acknowledge the tree. We talk to the tree and the fruit. We appreciate it. We thank it. We love it as we're talking to it. Of course, we nibble as we're taking. Like there was a peach tree recently. I believe it was in Howling Hills. Beautiful peaches. Peaches normally don't grow in Florida, by the way. And this yard had a whole collection of different fruits. It had pecans. It had chestnuts. It had citrus. It had pomegranates this big. Had grapes, had peaches, had apples, had northern and southern plants fruiting on this property. It was really a beautiful piece of property. So as we're talking to the tree and loving the tree and blessing the tree and sampling the fruit starts getting sweeter. And we realized, and then also we had this overwhelming feeling the tree was loving us back. It was quite an interesting feeling, but it was thanking us that we were acknowledging it and blessing it and honoring it. And we forget to do that many times when we're out in nature. A lot of people say, well, I walk in nature all the time. Yeah, but do you see it? Do you connect with it? Do you feel it? Do you smell it? Do you hear it? Do you connect with it at all? Or do you just walk through it? I took the Rangers out at Tibbet Butler Preserve, which is in southwest Orlando. And I've done a series of walkabouts with them in the past. And I said, you all need to walk with me. And by the way, they use this as their screensaver now in their office. So I took them on this trail that I call their Enchanted Trail, and I had already found faces in the trees and all this. And I pointed out what a face was. A limb used to be here, that's an eye. A limb used to be here, that's another eye. A limb used to be here, that's a nose. Another limb used to be here, oh, that's a mouth. And so once things start shifting, they start seeing things differently. So I took them on this trail, and they still were not necessarily getting it. Until I showed them this broken branch, and it looked like a dragon. Snout, you know, and then its eyes, and its head horns, and everything else, and it was a dragon. And it was quite amazing. Their eyes got super big, and their mouths looked like they hit the ground. And I said, see, you're seeing it too. And they said it changed them. All their nature walks are much different now, just because they started to see things differently. Also, too, it's that honoring and acknowledging the magic and the little innuendos of things out there. Now, I share this a lot in our walkabout programs, is that if you got any stresses and pains, you've heard me say it, you got to talk to your tree. Find a tree. You go to your tree, don't you? And Patricia has a tree, fortunately. She doesn't go to it enough. She's not here because she picked up her great nephew one day and it's got a pinched nerve in her back. So she's got shooting pains down her left side. So she's out of whack. And I keep saying, go to your tree, talk to your tree. Doesn't matter if you live next to your tree. Doesn't matter. If you had a tree when you were growing up and you played around it a lot, and you made that tree your friend, that tree is forever connected to you. Because you honored it, you played with it, you acknowledged it, you blessed it. I had a tree that, on my farm when I was growing up, and I was a little kid, but it was this big around. I have photographs of this tree that stands 2.5 times taller than our 2.5-story house. And it was right near the runway, and it captured a lot of planes in its top, and a lot of parachutists landed in that tree. But it was a big tree. It was a silver maple. And I would hug that tree a lot and sit by it. My playhouse is by it, and that was my tree. And then when I went into the city, I found, my mother said, you need to find a tree. There's no tree can grow in this spot. You need to find a tree. Okay, I'll find a tree. So I dug out the place, and we had 17 other trees on the property. In this one particular spot, every time they planted a tree, it died. They couldn't figure out why why trees kept dying. And I says, because you dug a hole and stuck it in, you didn't acknowledge, you didn't bless the land. So I dug it up, and sure enough, there were shingles, and there was contractors' garbage and everything else deep within the hole. All these poisons and everything were in the hole. So I dug all that up and cleared it out and brought in fresh peat and manure and everything else and watered the hole, and I honored the hole. I didn't even plant the tree yet. I already root pruned the tree and told the tree, oh, by the way, you're going to be moving soon. And I let the tree know what was going on, because that's part of the honoring. It was a small little sapling, about maybe 5 feet tall. It was a silver maple. Same as my Uncle Clem had planted, whom nobody knows who Uncle Clem was in my family. And I planted that tree, and it was indeed smaller than any of the other trees on the property. And years later, and it grew. It was so happy in that spot. It grew and grew. And years later, I went back, and sure enough, it had surpassed all the other trees in the yard. And there was a playhouse up in the tree, and there was a rope ladder coming down. There was a playhouse at the bottom. And so I thought, oh my God, of all the trees in the yard, this is the only one that has activity around it. So I went up and hugged the tree, and the tree's about this big around, and I was like, wow, it aged me really fast. But the tree was happy because there was so much activity around it. And it felt like it was being honored all the time because they were playing within it. And they were sitting by it, they were laughing around it. The only tree on the land. So, and I hugged the tree, and I talked to the tree, and as I was getting ready to get in my car, and it's interesting, I felt eyes upon me as I was hugging the tree. And sure enough, 2 kids came up to me and said, what were you doing to our tree? Excuse me? Well, that's our tree, that's our playhouse, and that's our tree house. And one kid said, I live across the street, and I said, well, my parents built your house, and I used to live in this house. And so I explained to him what I did, and I planted and all that other stuff, and honoring and everything. And the young boy that lived across the street says, well, my parents want to move. I think I'll go find a tree. So I have a reason to come back. So I have a reason to come back here. So afterwards, years later, I went back and visited my tree again, and the tree house was gone, the playhouse was gone, but there was a swing underneath the tree. The lighter wasn't really attached to the tree, but it was still the only tree on the property that had any activity around it. So they were still honoring. They could still feel that love energy around that tree. So I tune into that tree quite often. It's it keeps me at my ground as well. Now, years later, Patricia, when we moved into Apopka, she was extremely stressed one night. And I said, you need to go out and talk to our tree. She goes, what do you mean? We had a double oak tree that oversaw our house and everything else. So she goes out and thanks the tree for providing shade and shelter and homes for the squirrels and a superhighway for the squirrels and on and on. She was honoring, she was gratituding and blessing the tree for being there. And then went, oh, by the way, could you reduce this stress and pain from my body? And she leaned against the tree, and the tree took all her pain and stress away. And she comes back in about 10, 15 minutes later smiling, and so how's your pain and stress level up? It's 1/2 of 1. Before it was an 8. Oh, good. And so she has a relationship with that tree. She never had one as she was growing up. So I encourage you to find a tree. It can be any tree. We're going to visit a really wonderful tree this afternoon at Sugar Mill Gardens. There's a huge oak tree there. A lot of people tune into that tree. It's been there since Civil War. As I was corrected by the director of the Historical Society in Apopka, it was not a civil war, it was a war between the states. So another thing is that we're missing out I feel that if we had started long ago, and the Native Americans were the ones that really, I mean, unfortunately the Europeans came in and created havoc in this country because we lost our connection to the natural world. We need, you know, and why I'm saying that is because I find that once I honor and bless things, things happen. Now I'll give you an example, ask you, have any of you ever experienced blessing rain? Let me explain what that is. It's when you experience a few drops of rain falling down upon you. My head's getting hot. I gotta get this on. And you get a few drops of water falling down upon you from unknown sources. I mean, maybe just one drop of water. And maybe it's just a misting that comes about to you. Have any of you experienced that? It could be indoors or outdoors. Doesn't matter. And the first time I really acknowledged it or experienced it, I was laying on the back deck of a place called Paradise. It was in St. Petersburg at that time. Paradise had 40 tons of calcite crystal in the backyard, a 6-foot crystal fountain, crystal planters everywhere, and fairies and angels hanging from the trees, and not with nooses or anything like that, but and sparkle lights and Voltar candles and pathways and driftwood. It was really a magical place. And I was laying on the back deck, and my parents had passed away, and I had a sacred blanket. I still got it. That came to me in '87 with the instructions, it's time to get to work. So I was laying on this blanket and watching, it was full moon, it was supposedly a clear night, and all of a sudden I get this misting of water falling upon me. I mean, what the heck's going on? And then I noticed that 6 inches beyond the blanket it wasn't raining all the way around. I went, ooh, this is too strange. And I heard, you need to bless everyone. You need to do gratitude and blessings. And so I started doing all the blessings, and my mom and dad and everybody else that I could think of. And then went, thank you, amen. The rain stopped. I went, oh, this is quite odd. I didn't know what to make it. There was no clouds in the sky that I could see. There was no clouds. So the next morning, I'm standing out front with my lady friend, and we're talking. And all of a sudden, I get this misting of water. And there's water on my glasses and on my head. And she's standing right in front of me. She's not getting wet. There's no water coming down upon her. Oh, it must be the irrigation. No, the irrigation is not on. Oh, it must be a thunderstorm. You're not getting wet. I am. Oh, I don't know. An airliner must have passed over. No, you understand. This is blessing rains. I have to say thank you for my blessings today. And which I did, and the rain stopped. I went, something's going on today. And sure enough, I had to meet with my family and everything else, and I received $35,000 cash that day. Indeed, that was a blessing. Oh my gosh, it was cash, not a check. It was cash. It was like, oh my gosh. And so as I'm driving back to a Paradise, it was raining in my vehicle. I mean, there was misting of rain. Now, I would have had an RV called the Dolphin, and above my head is a bed. There's no reason that any water should be falling down upon me. It reminded me of the movie, Oh God, John Denver and George Burns. And it's raining inside his car, and he's got the windshield wipers on, and they can't do anything because it's inside his car. This is what was happening to me. So I go to a phone booth before we had cell phones and make a call, and sure enough, it's raining in the phone booth. And so I shared this several times, and I'm mentioning this to you because many times I've shared it in different churches, and everybody in the congregation gets blessing rains. So if you feel a little, dampness falling upon you, it's not me. I'm just mentioning to, but it's important that even one drop of water that falls upon you, you need to say, thank you for my blessings today. You just never know where those blessings will come about, or what will come about. Rather than say, oh, it's irrigation, or an airliner, or it's a bird, or it's something else. Say, thank you for my blessings today. Very important that you do that. You just never know. I mean, I was just shocked. And another type of blessings that come about may happen in nature. And you may have had this happen to you. Had a rain of leaves fall down upon you. As you're walking, you may have said something, and then all of a sudden there's just leaves coming down upon you. Or even acorns is when the squirrels are throwing them at you. So, acknowledge the nature. It's very important. I mean, we make it an effort, and we don't make an effort anymore. It just happens. And you'll find it becomes part of your nature of working with nature. And to honor and blessing, that seems to be a key issue these days, is that bringing that up. Because you just be surprised what takes place. Make sure you bless your food, so you don't get the energies of frantic and weird people invading your space. Make sure you stay true to yourself, and by the way, God is in everything. And by the way, if you do any storms, and come in the area, just say to your trees, be strong, but yet be flexible. Be strong, but yet be flexible. And I talked to a lot of trees that way, and they all were back and forth, but they didn't break. And so, and this weather that we're having is a bit bizarre for January, but remembrance, you can be in Montana with 2 feet of snow. So, I want to keep it short so we can have time to play later. So I thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to make a mention to you that we're doing a fairy festival in Casadega on March 30th. It's called Bridget's Fairy Fair at Bridget's Well. I'm also doing another show in Gulfport, April 27th. It's the Spring Fairy Fest. It's another organizer putting that together. And, before that, I'm doing a Fairy Realm Play Shop at Washington Oaks on April 14th, which is my half birthday. By the way, I celebrate half birthdays. And April 14th at Washington Oaks. It's on my Enchanted Community calendar. And then on the May 11th, I'm doing another show at All World Acres in Plant City, the Honoring Otter, and it's Come Home. Home is Honor Our Mother Earth. Thank you very much for the time, and I enjoyed it. Thank you.